Oh, yeah. You're listening to the 70s Kiss podcast. And I'm your host, the Plaster Podcaster, Steve-O from Knoxville, Tennessee. This show is about Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss. If you're looking for something else, you can just keep on knocking. And here we go again, as I said before in the first episode, doing a little series interviewing some of my friends and bandmates. I'm lucky enough to have known some people who also experienced Kiss in the 70s. And I have on the line John Pritchett. How you doing, John?
I'm doing well, Steve-O. How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. So let's go into this. So tell me what it was like. And, well, actually, just tell me what was the very first thing that you seen? Was it the makeup, or did you hear the music first, or was it a combination?
You know, looking back on those days, I can't remember exactly what came first. Obviously, both are important. I mean, obviously, the music struck me. It was, and I was already into guitars a little bit. I'm not quite enough. I mean, they were when I heard their sound, it was so enticing. It was you know, kind of what the typical teenager was looking for, something different, something that wasn't acceptable to your parents. So when I heard them, you know, obviously I was drawn to it. I mean, I remember the Destroyer album, and I'm not sure what other albums I heard, but obviously the hits, you know, kind of stood out. God of Thunder, Detroit Rock City, Love Gun, Calling Dr. Love, and all those, you know, Christine 16 and Beth, obviously. So they kind of they just kind of struck a nerve. And then, like I said, I don't remember when I saw the costumes and the makeup, whether it was first or at the same time, probably around the same time. And it just made an impression. Those two together really catapulted them into another level where, even as a Beatle fan, I was like, wow, this is more, especially, in those days, just going through school. So it really struck a chord on me. And so those are the hits, and the guitar work, the riffs, the tones of the guitar, the loud and the drum beat. And the tone of their voices was so rock and rollish to me. It's just like Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, just the way that they sang their songs. It just cried rock and roll, So anyway, that's kind of how it happened to me.
So how young were you? Where were you living? What state were you living in at the time?
Okay, I distinctly remember the first. It was back in Maryland, Ellicott City. And I was, I guess, in ninth grade, living in Ellicott City, and around that time, of course, I was also listening to, I first got turned on to Jimi Hendrix and Lynyrd Skynyrd. I'd already been a Beatle fan for quite some time, even as elementary school, but that was a little more innocent. The Beatles, it was just music only, the music was really nice.
Yeah, it was part of our, actually part of the chorus line and stuff in school. When we went to class, they were doing Beatles music for class experiments and stuff like that. But, yeah.
Well, also, before I moved to Maryland, I lived in Winchester, Virginia. So I remember in middle school listening to stuff like Heart, like Magic Man, and class. I don't know if it was music class. I guess it must have been music class. And the teacher would play like Magic Man and Hotel California and stuff like that. Those kind of songs that were popular those days.
Yeah.
late 70s, mid-late 70s.
Do you remember the kids going around, the BG fans, saying Kiss sucks?
No, I don't remember that. No. And again, like I said, once I moved to Maryland, I entered a phase of a little bit more radical. Especially once I heard Leonard Skinner and Jimi Hendrix. It just, the guitar music really latched onto me. I guess also being a Beatle fan, anything guitar was cool,
So when did you first become a musician? What
age?
I
distinctly remember, like I was 15 after my mom died. We relocated to. Well, I had to move with my stepfather to New Mexico, Albuquerque, and someone had a guitar. I don't remember if it was one of his sons, my stepbrothers, and I just picked it up, and I remember hearing Led Zeppelin and songs from their albums, and just being drawn to guitar music. I things like stuff off their first album, "Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You," just that kind of acoustic sound that also was very rock and rollish because of the drums and the vocals of Led Zeppelin. So I picked up the guitar, and I just I think that was the beginning. And then you throw in there, moving to Maryland, you throw in Leonard Skinner, guys turning me on. Jimi Hendrix, like I'd never heard before, like wow, Purple Haze, and all along the Watchtower. Those just they just got under my skin, man. And it just created this passion in me that I knew I was going to learn guitar. And I also remember taking a couple of lessons from a guy in high school there in Maryland, in Ellicott City. I remember a guy teaching me "Dust in the Wind," like the picking patterns and stuff. So
yeah.
Guitar was a big part of my life.
Then all of a sudden, these guys jump out with makeup, wearing guitars and makeup and costumes.
When I first discovered Kiss, they overthrew, like, to me, they conquered Leonard Skinner and even Hendrix at that, because I hadn't heard a lot of them. I mean, they just kind of bombed me out of the water, man. They blew me out of the water completely because they were so over the top.
Yeah, it was big like Michael Jackson or Elvis Presley. I mean, actually, Elvis Presley was really big, peaking at the time that Kiss jumped out, and I can remember playing drums in my living room one day, because I used to when I found out that I could set up my drum set near the front door and start playing to like the Kiss albums and stuff. The girls would come like down the sidewalk and try to peek into the doorway, and I thought that was pretty cool. But I could also remember in sixth grade, one of our things was we had to draw out it was like a movie, like a comic book, but you had to draw it out, and it was a project, so you had to present it to the class with like audio and pictures and stuff. And it was weird, and it was perfect for me because I picked Kiss, and I was able to go in and write out this story line, kind of like a comic book, and use the Kiss music and stuff. I remember going in and drawing this huge poster of Paul Stanley, and having the live album on there playing Parasite, and the kids in the class just thought I was crazy, man. And the teacher would just laugh, and I had this one shirt that I would wear all the time. It was a blue tie-dye shirt, and I'd wear it almost every day because I just thought that was the coolest thing the closest thing that I could get to Kiss was just wearing the cool stuff. And we did that little project in school, and I remember the girl that sat beside me, she was a Bee Gees fan, and she came to school one day and had this shirt that said "Kiss sucks." And man, I tell you what, we went at it for like, I don't know, the whole year. But anyway, enough about me. But so basically, you listened to some music, and it influenced you to play guitar. So do you remember, let's go back to Kiss. Do you remember what maybe the first song that you were able to play on guitar from the band? Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm getting my timeline a little mixed up. I told you about going to Albuquerque. That was actually later. When my mom died, we moved out of Fort Meade. Before living in Fort Meade, I was in Ellicott City, Maryland, and that's where I went to high school, and I listened to Kiss and Skinner and all those things. It was all happening very fast, and I remember getting my first guitar. I believe that my first guitar was an electric, and I don't remember the brand, but it was the one thing I'll remember about it was that it had a chrome pickguard. Or metal, maybe it wasn't chrome, but it was a shiny metal.
Yeah.
I mean, not like painted chrome or anything. It was real metal, shiny steel pickguard around the pickups. And I wish I'd have remembered the brand name, because to this day I still relish that guitar. I don't know, must have got rid of it at some point, but I also remember in those days, this is what Kiss did to me. I mean, I really wanted to hear the electric guitar sound. I didn't have money for an amp, but what I did have was one of those portable tape players, radios. And I don't know what got into me, but I was very experimental. I was very curious, and I opened up the back. I guess I opened up into the speaker into the speaker component of this portable boombox. It wasn't like a stereo; it was like a one speaker deal. And I was able to wire it up to the guitar. And then when you hit record on the tape, you put a blank tape in there or something, and you hit record, the guitar will come out. The guitar sound will come out. You can play just like an amp. I don't remember exactly what I did, but I remember it worked, and it wasn't like a clean sound. You can actually get some feedback on it.
So were you playing some Kiss through that?
I remember learning stuff like Dr. Love, calling Dr. Love, basic stuff, basic riffs. I wasn't really good. I mean, obviously, just starting out in those days, but I was really addicted to Kiss. So I was trying to learn those things. Never could learn any leads of them. One thing about Kiss, and to this day, I always think Calling Dr. Love was one of their better leads.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. It's an awesome lead.
Even though it's not very long, and maybe some people would debate me on that, but I just think it's the ebb and flow of that song, and when he hits that lead and he starts going off, it just takes you somewhere else.
Yeah. It's always been one of my favorite leads as well. So let me back up on the timeline a little bit. How did your parents react to this new thing? Did they act like it was comic book characters at first? Did it bother them with the Kings and Satan service and all that stuff?
Well, I don't remember getting into it with them. They were my stepfather was an alcoholic, my mom was depressed. And so my music, I guess the rock and roll thing and hanging out with my friends and getting high and stuff and skipping school, that was my escape.
Sure.
I think just kind of being a teenager, and so I never really sat around the table talking to my parents about Kiss. I don't remember.
Well, you were lucky.
I don't think they would appreciate. Maybe we did, but they were against, they wanted me to do like any parent, they wanted me to do well in school and kind of, dress right and be, but obviously I was doing all the opposite things.
Well, let me tell you what, you were very lucky because I lived here in Tennessee in the Bible Belt, and my mother started going to church religiously, and it was a Pentecostal church. So my father was a musician, so I had that on my side, and he would go to church and then he would slip a little bit, and he always, playing in the clubs and stuff like that. There was always guitars and musical instruments in the house. So I got away with a little bit, but when Kiss came out with that makeup and I started bringing in those posters and all that, and they heard the news on, that they were, Kings and Satan service and this and that, my mother would not stop. I probably bought the Kiss collection at least 10 times. I'm not even lying.
She did what?
I had to buy the collection like 10 times. I mean, up to that point, okay. I mean, like from the very first Kiss album, I'm going to say until about Love Gun, or right before Love Gun. she would find my albums and break them, throw them in the trash, burn them, and, if any of her church buddies come over, she made a spectacle out of it. Look what I'm doing, and never really got into big trouble, but she would just destroy it, So I had this sheetrock wall, and I had tore out a hole in the wall behind our bunk bed, and I let the blanket hang down over the hole, and just the sheetrock was just hanging there, so I could move it and stick my stuff in there and hide it. And she wouldn't find it. So what I had to do is I had to resort to 8 tracks because they were easier to hide.
Mm. Yeah, I love those 8 tracks.
Oh yeah. So basically what happened then, I'll never forget this. Let me tell you this when we'll get back to it. My brother, my brother, Scott.
Right.
So
the heckler.
Yeah, the heckler. That's right. So one day the solo albums came out, and Woolworths, I think, was selling them for like $2.99 or $2, just something crazy. It was a crazy price. And we were getting an allowance of $5. And I told my brother, I said, hey, let's go to Woolworths and I'll get the Ace Frehley and you get the Gene Simmons album. He goes, okay. Now, he was only like 5 years old. And so we go get them, and I told him, I said, don't you let Mom see that album. I said, because as soon as she sees it, she's going to bust it, dude. And he was like, okay, I'll hide it. So we get home, and I hurry up and go into my room, and I hide my Ace Frehley album. And my brother comes in after me, and she sees him, and she's like, oh, Scotty, what did you get with your allowance money? And he was like, look, Mom, I got a Gene Simmons album, and pulled it out. And, it was a solo album with the blood coming down the lip. And she just grabbed it and busted it over her knee right in front of me, started crying.
Yeah, I mean, they were controversial. I mean, by the kids in Satan's service, it was easy to get out, it's easy to look at them that way. And especially people that are the faith and people that are conservative, they were gonna attack and go against it. They didn't want your kids, they didn't want to let your kids go on the wrong path. But I mean, that's what we did.
Oh, I was going down that path regardless.
They were skyrocketing. They were skyrocketing, and they just came out with, their songs were just coming out, and they were good songs. I mean, really, I was, I wasn't so much only the rock guitar riffs and the sound. I mean, they actually had good construction in their sound, their songs. Good beginnings, good.
Yeah, it was good stuff. It was good stuff, and and back on that view, same thing kind of happened to Elvis with his hip shake and all that stuff. It was the same kind of a reaction, but when Gene Simmons coming out, as the persona, as the devil, as the demon, that was a little bit overboard for the '70s for a lot of people. But I had
and I hadn't even heard of Alice Cooper yet, so. To me, Kiss were the fathers of shock rock. To me, I mean, although I think Alice Cooper might have been a little bit before them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they were. They were before.
Yeah.
So, so let me get on with this. So you became a Kiss fan, and obviously you were buying their albums and the comic books and. The bubblegum cards and all this stuff. Were you one of those Kiss fans that kind of got addicted to the art, the makeup, the whole persona of the brand?
No, I mean I didn't try to copy them. For whatever reason, I don't know if I just didn't have the resources or time, or maybe my friends weren't Kiss fans. I think, as a matter of fact, out of all my friends, I mean, my best friends were into either Skinner or Hendrix or Zeppelin. So I got turned on to Zeppelin around the same time.
Yeah,
and that was like, actually, I kind of had this feeling that Kiss was inferior to them because my friends. Because my friends were, almost like I was.
Kiss sucks.
I was wrapped into. No, maybe not that, but I was in. It was more like teeny bop, maybe. that if you really were cool, you listen to Led Zeppelin, or or Hendrix was really for cool kids that that they're more mature and they're more musically selective and stuff,
Yeah.
But Kiss was like bubblegum rock, like it's just so commercial, and I didn't think that way back then, but I thought that I was different by being hooked on Kiss, because all my friends weren't. I mean, the guys I hung out with were more, a little bit more down, a little bit more in a different direction than that.
Right. So some of your friends as well, just like some of my friends, didn't get it either. I can remember Leonard Skinner and AC/DC taking off right about that same time. And the very first time that I heard them, I was living in the city. I was living in Johnson City on Wilson Avenue, which is kind of the ghetto. And us snotty-nosed kids would run through the alley and stuff and do the crazy stuff kids do. And there was these older guys right down the street from us that would always be hollering at us, "Hey, what are you kids doing?" And just messing with us and stuff. And one of this guys' name was Jerry Ushery, and he had the Kiss stuff playing out the window of his apartment and of his mother's place, and I knew his little brother hung out with him and stuff, and he had this stuff blasting out the window. And I remember me and his brother were out there, and we just stopped, and I was just looking up the window, and I was like, "What is that?" And it was "Making Love" off the Rock and Roll Over album. And he's like, "What are you kids staring at?" And I was like, "What are you playing out the window? What is that?" He goes, "It's Kiss." I said, "What?" He says, "It's Kiss. You don't know what Kiss is?" And I just kind of looked at my friend and laughed, which was his brother. He goes, "Come up here, boy. Let me show you what Kiss is." So we go up to the room. He pulls out all the albums, all the pictures, all the stuff, and it just kind of overwhelmed me because I had just come out of comic book era, Superman, G.I. Joe, all that stuff, Star Wars was hitting up right about that time. So the mystical side of things with like the comic book type thing was hitting with me as well. The way they look, the makeup, the costumes, and actually the music, even though I come from a musical family and there's been musicians in my family since way back, the actual makeup and stuff is what hit me at first. And then when the rock and roll came in with it and started putting on the albums, I was just trying to put the two together and try to figure out what in the world was going on here. And then the next thing you know, this guitar just started getting in my ear as Ace Frehley. At the time, I was a drummer, and I had been playing drums since I was about 8 years old. And my father was teaching me with his band and stuff. And real quick, I started leaning toward that guitar. And he's like, he goes, "You're wanting a guitar, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "You need to stick with drums." So I started listening to Peter Criss and trying to mimic Peter Criss and all that stuff. And like I said, set my drums up in the living room for the girls who were walking down the sidewalk. But it was a crazy, crazy time. I can remember being outside. And it was in 1977, I believe it was 77, and this kid run down the street and was like, "Elvis is dead, Elvis is dead." And it wasn't long or before that or after that, I think Leonard Skinner crashed in the plane crash. And then, you had Kiss meets the Phantom. All this stuff was happening right around the same time. And it was in Star Wars and then disco. It was a weird time to be a teenager.
It was, man. It was, and those were the days when I was really acting out. I was doing bizarre stuff. I mean, obviously I was into weed and everything, and I remember being late for school, missing the bus, and I hitchhiked down Bethany Lane, going to Ellicott City, going to Mount Heron High School, and this guy picked me up who was going to school too, and he had all kinds of liquor in the car, and we got wasted in the parking lot there at the school, and then I I slammed the door on my pinky.
Oh no.
So my mom had to come get me. I'd get stitches, and I was in big trouble. I mean, I think I gave my mom a lot of heartaches in those days.
Yeah.
Between the music and the behavior. I remember going. Another friend. I think we stole a case of whiskey somewhere, and we used to get. Get one bottle at a time and kind of go away at that. Another friend, the Leonard Skinner dude that I was friends with, one time we went up on a church, on top of the church on the roof, and we started doing when you look through the joint the other way, and the guy, and then you squeeze their lungs and they pass out.
Oh God, yeah, I remember that where you take them out. Yeah.
Top of a church roof, man.
Oh no.
I mean, those real crazy, man. But it wasn't just the music; it was just those days, man.
It was a wild time. Now, some of the stuff that was happening with the comic books and the music and the whole thing about the band kept me in the bedroom a lot, with my imagination just kind of growing. So sometimes when my friends would be out doing things like that, I would be stuck in that room reading that magazine, trying to figure out, wow, I want to do this. How can I do this? This is crazy. I want to meet these guys. Obviously my parents weren't going to let me go see Kiss when they came to Freedom Hall in Johnson City. Now I was going to Liberty Bell when they came. I believe it was in 77. I was going to Liberty Bell, and I can remember the Kiss setting up in Freedom Hall because our school and Freedom Hall Civic Center is adjoined. That was actually where we had gym and all that stuff. And I can remember them coming and everything, and my mom saying, "Oh well, if they're going to be at school today, if they're going to be, you're just not going to go to school today." And we would figure out ways to sneak out and just go because it was, my parents were always working, so that we had a lot of free time to be able to do what we wanted. And I would let my friends hang on to my albums and stuff next door. So when my mom and dad would go to work, of course my dad had a stereo system and everything. I'd go next door, get my albums, bring them over, and turn them on. But there was a time when the things changed, and I became like 13, 14, 15 years old, and I was a little bit more out of hand, like what you were talking about with drugs and stuff like that, and drink, and just curiosity killing the cat type things. But it was a crazy, crazy time. So let me
give you another example. This friend of mine, the Hendrix kid that I was friends with, best buddy at the time. And I used to get my weed from him down the street. And we'd go hang out in his room with his brother, and we'd do, get wasted and stuff. But at one point, I guess he was selling Red Dragon.
Damn. And you were how old?
Yeah.
You were how old?
14, 15.
There you go. There it is. Right there's the difference. We were like, when we were 14 years old, we were like 20 years old. Back in the 70s, it's weird.
It is. I mean, unthinkable, but it is. It just, and my friends were more. I guess they were more mature. I would never thought of selling them, but anyway, and I got a job at the Post Meriwether Post Pavilion in Columbia, Maryland. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah.
Hendrix had been there and Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got a job at the events, at the concerts, cleaning up and stuff. So I got to see a lot of free concerts there. And one time I remember, he gave me a portion of a sheet of Red Dragon so I could sell some. I remember trimming the edges so I get some free for myself.
Wow. So let me ask you, so when was your first concert? When did you see Kiss live?
Oh, well, I didn't see Kiss for a long time, man. I wanted to. Either they never came around, or I never heard of them being around, or I didn't have the money, or whatever. There was a lot of reasons why. Mm-hmm. And then I could maybe, they were broke, and I would have never seen them unless they were original lineup, too. And by the way, back in those days, I always wondered what they looked like without the makeup.
Oh, yeah. Everybody did.
They never took it off. You never see them without it.
Well, we didn't have the internet back then. And
that was mystique. Part of their mystique was you didn't know who they really were.
Yeah, there was not a lot of news about them when they were on the news, on TV. It wasn't good, and there wasn't any thing going on like with the Beatles, about Paul or whatever. They were, there's nothing going on with Paul Stanley like, oh, this is Paul Stanley, what he looks like. Every now and then you would see like a People's Magazine. I think People's Magazine was the one that tried to get him the most. And I know that Cream Magazine did a actual full layout with them. But nobody ever knew what they looked like, and that was what the thing was. That's what made it so mystical and went along with the characters of the comic book and everything. Is to the kids, the younger kids, like 12 years old, 10 years old, to those kids, hey, this is like Superman or Spider-Man, and man, they play rock and roll. Right. It wasn't like how the teenagers, kind of looked at it. This is a rock band and they're wearing makeup. It was completely the opposite, and you kind of grew into the other side of things. But so, where did you see Kiss first?
I only saw them once, and that would have been like the year 2000 or so.
Oh, okay.
In San Antonio, and the reason I went to see them is they were back together. They were the original.
Oh, okay.
They were. You had Peter Criss and Ace Frehley back in the lineup.
So that was either the reunion tour or the farewell tour, one or the other. I can't remember.
Yeah, and they just happened to come to San Antonio. I was living in Corpus Christi, near Corpus Christi back in those days. And, you couldn't have stopped me. I mean, I had a job, I had money, and I was going to get a ticket. It wasn't the best seat, but it was, I don't think it didn't matter because I'll never forget that concert. It was just, as a matter of fact, Ted Nugent backed him up.
Yeah, it was. I saw this. So that was the farewell tour, and I saw the same one in Knoxville, Tennessee. By the way, same year. And what happened was the same thing that happened to you happened to me. I never saw Kiss live in the '70s. Okay,
right.
I never saw the original band until 1996 and 2000. And I actually worked for Kiss a couple times as a union stagehand and met them during the other bands, when they had different members and all that stuff. But it wasn't as appealing to me. But I did meet them, or I did see them just like you did. I never got to see them when it was in the 70s. It was all the way up into 96 before I saw the real band. So when that happened, it was like, it was crazy. It was wild to me. Me and my wife went.
Yeah, but Steve-O, I mean, to me, it was just even now thinking back how good they were, even as old as they were. I mean, because they had broken up, they had gotten back together, and that they had been, they already did their thing, they already had their fame, and here they are, they're getting back together. And they're older, way older than their prime. But it was one of the, even to this day, it's one of the best concerts. I mean, almost by far that I've ever seen. And I'm not like anymore. I'm not like a Kiss fan like I was as a kid, because my musical taste has developed. Has evolved.
Yeah.
And I'm not so much into the spectacle. Although I still like them. I still like their music as it was.
Oh,
I never liked anything they did without Peter Criss and Ace Frehley.
Yeah. For some reason, it's kind of like this. It's almost the best way to explain it. And there's a lot of these new Kiss fans just don't understand. And one of the things that people say is they don't understand because they weren't there. And that's one of the things that some of these podcasters or some of the new Kiss fans will say, and try to put a 70s Kiss fan down because they weren't there, they don't understand. Well, it's exactly right. If they weren't there, they don't understand what it was like to be a fan in the 70s, because it was completely different. It was completely different than the 1980s, where they started to deteriorate and turn into all these other different styles of bands like the glam band and all that. When that started, Kiss started going downhill. They were still playing concerts, and they were coming out with these songs and stuff that people liked. at the time, but the spectacle was gone. It was completely gone until 1996 and 2000 when we saw them again. When me and Christine went the second time, by the way, I married a girl named Christine, which was one of my things. I always used to say, I'm going to marry Christine 16, you know. But anyway, we went to the second concert, which was in 2000. There was this guy standing outside. The show was getting ready to start. People were going in late. And, you know, Ted Nugent was starting. And this guy had a ticket, and it was front row seat for $20. And I went ahead and bought it, you know, because we had like kind of nosebleed seats, you know. Wasn't really a bad place, there. But went ahead and, you know, bought the ticket. And me and my friends just took turns going down to the front row and standing there for a minute and, you know, watching them from the front row and coming back up with the ticket stub because you had to show your stub to get in there. And there was these executives on the front row there. I don't know. It was like well into the tour or whatever. And Ace Frehley was drunk as shit up there on stage. And he had his guitar and shooting that rocket. You know how he shoots it up in the air. Well, he stumbled and shot it, and it went out in the audience. And I was standing beside these executives that had passes on and stuff, and overheard them talking that it was close to his last show. They were getting ready to fire him because he was just out of hand. And I can understand, you know, when you get out on the road and you start doing drugs and you start drinking and stuff like that, things happen. I understand that. I spent 10 years on the road. And I think one of the main reasons people get hooked on this stuff is because the bumps in the road and how tired it makes you. If you can imagine what it feels like when you go on a long trip and you very first get back, that feeling of, I just got to sit down on the couch and chill for a minute because, man, I'm just wore out. I have jet lag or whatever. That's what it feels like 24/7 when you're on the road. It doesn't matter how nice the hotel is or how cool that the jet was or how comfortable you were going back and forth, you get wore out. And so anybody that can go out on the road and be a rock and roll star and not have the alcohol and marijuana or pills and coke or whatever that affect you, then you're doing something that nobody else has figured out how to do because most of the time these people are using those to try to cut the edge. And what happens is they just keep going and keep going and keep going, and then finally they get overboard with it, and it takes over. And I think that's what we've seen with Ace Frehley and Peter Criss, not only in the 70s, but up into the 90s.
Well, yeah, and you juxtapose that with Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. In my opinion, I haven't really researched it a lot, but it just seems like they were more the business guys.
They were, and they said they never did any drugs and alcohol, but I'm going to tell you, it was there. I guarantee you they tried it. I mean...
Well, I don't doubt it, but for whatever reason, they always seemed to be in control, whether it was power tripping or just the need to... I don't know if they wrote most of the stuff or whatever, but they took control of that band. And when the other guys jeopardized the money that you can make, I guess. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. It just seems like it, the two guys that were messing up most had to go. And unfortunately for the fans, it didn't hurt their pocketbook because they were able to
well,
replace them.
you have to replace people if it's not working. If it's a broken car, you got to get it fixed to go down the road. But when those four people disbanded and it was just two, in my opinion, this is just me, Kiss is a big name and this and that, but Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons should have called it something else. They should have just went on down the road, left that name behind, because to me, if two members of the Beatles left and it was just two members, to me it's no longer the Beatles. If you take Jimmy Page and John Bonham out of Led Zeppelin, you don't have Led Zeppelin. And that's one of the reasons Led Zeppelin didn't pick up where they left off with John Bonham's son and just kept going, which they could have. It just wasn't the same. And if you look at Peter, Ace, Paul, and Gene's ability, if you look at each one of them individually as a musician, they have their qualities and then they have, their limits of what they can do as a musician. Okay? And when you put those four together, though, they have a chemistry that made Kiss. You can put two extravaganza guitar players in there like Vinnie Vincent or Yngwie Malmsteen. It doesn't matter. Or Steve Vai. How great they are. It's going to add an element to it, but it's going to add their own element. It's not going to add, like Peter Criss was kind of like a simple jazz type drummer, blues drummer, funk drummer. He wasn't Neil Peart. He was just one of those rock solid drummers. And you put that with Ace Frehley, which was obviously influenced by Jimi Hendrix and Jimmy Page and some others. And you put those two things together and you get something. You know what I mean? And, even though Paul and Gene did carry on the band, they took over the band, kept going, I can praise them for that. But when those four guys broke, Kiss broke to me.
I agree. Do you think it has anything to do with being a musician too? Because here's the other part of it. I mean, that you have to think about is that, if you had Gene Simmons and we'll never know, you can't rewrite history, but if you had Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley and they had started with, or tried to start with two other guys, they may have never gotten anywhere.
You're right.
They might have been as good, or they might have even been better musicians, but they might have had ego problems or whatever, But for whatever reason, four guys clicked.
Well, let me ask you this. Yeah, they did click. But remember, we had two elements of this band. We had the makeup and the costume, and then we had the music. Okay?
Right.
Here's the big question. If Kiss had not put that makeup on, would we ever even have heard of them?
That's a good question, man. That is a great question. Yeah, they might have been a local band for a while, never got, maybe never cut a record at all.
Yeah, I grew into their music. I'm glad I did. I mean, it really influenced me as a guitar player. Ace Frehley is my main influence, and a lot of people didn't know that up until date, because I was in a Jimi Hendrix tribute band, played in several rock and roll bands. I played in blues bands, played in top 40 bands on the road. A lot of people would come up to me and go, "Oh, Stevie Ray Vaughan is is the guy," or this and that. A lot of people never knew that Ace Frehley was my guy. Okay, so if you transpose that from the blues guys, which is Muddy Waters and some of these cats, on down through Jimi Hendrix, down to Ace Frehley, down to me, yeah, I guess I'm a blues fan, But a lot of people don't look at it like that. They're stuck in one category. They don't understand what comes from what. But to me, when you divide those four guys up, you get Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley with two expert other players that just kind of mend it back together. They don't make mistakes. They're robots. They get what they want. But, what they don't get is that chemistry between those original four guys. That's what they don't get, and I think that's what a lot of people are missing. Yeah, you can put the makeup on anybody. You can put them on. Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter. But you're not going to get the chemistry that those four guys created. It's got to be those four guys. It's got to be the four Beatles. It's got to be the guys in Zeppelin. It's got to be the guys in Aerosmith. I mean, it's just the way it works. I don't know why, but that's the way it works.
Yeah, and I think there's something. I mean, this is another thing that we can debate upon. Who knows what really? There's something kind of subconscious about Kiss, kind of like the Beatles and the I don't know. Maybe there's something that they're good music. They're good. Not all their music, but they're good music that I like. It feels like it's transcendent.
Mm-hmm. It's good music.
We'll say it's trash because they don't like it, but
it's original.
To me, it's like it etched a memory in me. And I can play that stuff. I mean, when I'm 95, if I ever live to be 90, I'll still remember that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? The riffs are mathematically correct, man. They're part of my consciousness, part of my subconsciousness.
So while we're on this,
but I'm not. They're the only ones. There's other bands that have this. They just have that ability to bring out music that is rememberable.
Can they do that without Peter Criss and Ace Frehley?
Well, they maybe, I don't know, but I guess some people are loyal too. You know, I'm kind of like a loyal person, so I feel bad when a team breaks up and then doesn't try to honor the original team for some reason. Even if it didn't work, we break up for a while, but if we all want to, we get back together.
Yeah.
Or when the time is right. But never say no. Never say never. Never. I mean, unless they did something really terrible to you. I mean, I don't think that.
Well, who knows?
I mean,
who knows what happened?
Peter Criss and Ace Frehley helped make Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley who they are now.
Yeah. So while we're on this subject, and it's probably going to be a question that I ask everybody in the next interviews up until the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame happens. There's been this big outcry from the 70s Kiss fans because of the situation. There's been several articles come out here of late from Paul Stanley saying that they had never had any idea that they were going to let Ace and Peter play. They weren't going to do it. The whole plan was to have those guys accept their award and sit down and watch the two replacements perform in their makeup. To me, that is the biggest punch they could ever, throw at those guys, and it also punched me right in the nose as a 70s Kiss fan. As I stated on another podcast, to me, that's almost like, Led Zeppelin receiving this award and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame saying, oh, well, or a couple of members of the band saying, well, Jimmy Page and John Bonham can't play. They can get the award and sit down, but these new guys are the ones that are going to play. And it's a little different because, Led Zeppelin didn't wear makeup, but, that was Led Zeppelin. It's almost like saying, hey, Ringo and Paul have to sit down during the Beatles thing. They can't play. The new guys are going to have to play. Of course, we know that there's no new guys in that band, but I just don't get it. I don't understand why Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons just can't say, okay, we hate these guys, but this is it. This is a big deal for the fans. So it's just 20 minutes. Let's let these guys get up there in their original format, play a couple of songs, let these other guys come in and, honor them too because they're part of history. And, it's a win-win situation. But I think because of the things that's happened between them in the past, and we don't know what that is, and I can almost guarantee it's just crazy stuff from experiencing the road myself. But I can guarantee this, it would be a great night, and it would be a win-win situation, but they're not going to do that. So my question is to you, another Kiss fan, how do you feel about them shunning Ace and Peter this way? What's your feelings about this?
I think it's juvenile, but I also understand. I try to understand. I don't. It's hard to understand how these famous people think. These people are so rich. They're so famous. There's, they. I'm sure when they were kids they struggled, but that's long behind them. They've been in the money for a long time. And they may have a certain, ego. Obviously, they have egos, and I'm sure that plays a. It's easier for us to say, and we're right as fans to demand Ace and Peter Criss to be in there. We're right, absolutely right. But we maybe don't understand how hard it is for Gene and Paul. Because of who they are.
Well, they make this statement. They make this statement that what we do for the fans. Obviously, this move was not for the fans. It was, it's a vendetta.
Well, I can understand if most of the fans are saying we love the new lineup better than the old lineup. I doubt that's the case.
Well, there's a lot of new Kiss fans. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, just because it didn't last past the 80s, there was different transitions into this band, and during those transitions, people were being born, okay? And when they became teenagers, that's the Kiss they know. They don't know anything about the past, and when you slap that makeup on these new guys, shoot far, they don't know. They don't know who these guys are. It's Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer to them, the Spaceman and the Catman, but they don't know, they don't understand that, hey, Ace Frehley designed his makeup, he designed the Kiss logo, and he also designed Paul Stanley's makeup. They don't understand where all that came from, but you can't blame them because they're new Kiss fans, and they don't care about Ace and Peter. They only care about the new guys, and they think the band is great as a whole, what they are now. And I understand that, and I get it, and that's why I'm saying, all the members need to be inducted and talked about at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All of them need to be brought in, but they need to set it as the core members of what started this phenomenon, and do their little, 3-minute video on the history, and then come out and let them play a couple songs, and then do a big, thing with all the members there. It'd be great. But since Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley are so pissed off at Ace and Peter, and there's such a vendetta type thing going on, it's not going to happen, and the fans suffer for it. So, I have a problem with that. I just don't think it's cool. I think they're letting us down, and you never know, they may change at the last minute. But I don't understand why they would do this to the fans right now. Why don't they just go out with a spectacle and class and make it a big deal, for us, for everybody. But we live in a dramatized world. The music business is always doing something crazy like this. There's always something going on,
Well, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Has it crossed your mind that this is all just a publicity stunt?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It has crossed my mind that that's what's going on. But to me, the tickets went on sale for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame there a few days ago, and they're carrying this on past that. So there's a lot of people going, hey, I'm not paying $350 for a nosebleed ticket, or $2,000 for a high level ticket, or $25,000 for a table on the floor. If they're not going to be there, and that's basically what they're saying, they're not going to be there. But no, I think that a lot of things happened. I read both Ace's and Peter's book, and they have pretty much come out in the books and stated the facts, a lot of the facts of what happened, and more than anything, they put themselves down. They tell everything that they've done. So I'm not going to sit here and say I think Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley were angels. I'm sure that they did some, crazy, stupid shit too, and that's just on the same level. But when you're on substance abuse, it's very easy for somebody to put the thumb on you, and push you to the curb. But these guys admitted to what's happened. But I'm going to tell you this, and I stated this on another podcast when I was being interviewed. None of that mattered in 1996, did it? 1996, Ace Frehley and Peter Criss was good enough for Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley to go out and make millions of dollars on the reunion tour. They didn't say anything about the past, how much drugs so-and-so did and what they ruined or anything. They was good enough to go out and do that reunion and farewell tour. And then I guess in between the reunion and the farewell, they must have been punching each other in the face, after the shows in the hotel rooms or something. Who knows what was going on? But evidently it was even worse than the early years. So,
well, didn't they come out? I mean, I saw them in 2000. They must have made up again to go out in 2000.
Yeah, that was the farewell tour. Yeah, it extended the reunion tour just basically extended into the farewell tour, and I believe right around that time is when things were really starting to go bad. And I believe that it was probably over money. Kiss is Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. They own Kiss. Basically, during the reunion and farewell tour, Ace Frehley and Peter Criss were hired hands. They were hired guns. So they weren't making as much money as Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, which is another issue that I have, because everything that Kiss has done and Gene and Paul have done since the reunion tour is showing right now with TV shows, football teams, everything that they're doing, the big spectacle concerts that they're having now with the big production and everything. I believe that money was made off the reunion tour. So, but anyway, you know, I'm open-minded about it. I hope they can just come together, you know, and bring these guys on the stage, play their songs, go out in style. Let us fans, you know, go cool, you know, light our lighter up or whatever, and go on down the line. But that's all I have for you today, man. Maybe we can get you back again, John.
Okay, Steve-O. Nice talk.
I appreciate you calling in, and hope to see you soon. Hope we can jam sometime with Mark and reminisce ourselves. So that's a wrap. Well, that's it, folks. Until next time, this is the Plaster Podcaster saying, I'm out. Oh, yeah. Look, it's rock and roll.